Everyone covering Ferrari's Austria preparations is talking about the engine, the third version of the 067/6, the ADUO tokens. The combustion chamber changes, the turbocharger internals, the intercooler temperature rising from 100 to 115 degrees. That is the story in every outlet, in every language, on every platform covering Formula One this week. It is also only half the story, because buried in the technical reporting around Ferrari's Austria package is a detail that has received almost no dedicated coverage, and it is the detail that might actually matter more than the engine hardware itself: the fuel. Shell's laboratory in Hamburg has developed a chemical formulation specifically for the combustion environment Ferrari is creating in Austria. Not an update to an existing fuel, not a refinement of last year's specification. A new compound built from scratch around a combustion chamber that runs at temperatures no conventional fuel was designed to handle. The FIA has homologated it. Ferrari intends to run it the moment approval for the complete package arrives, and here is the part that makes this genuinely interesting rather than simply technical. Nobody outside Shell's Hamburg facility and Ferrari's engine department knows exactly what is in it. The horsepower numbers floating around paddock this week, 5, 8, 10, 15, all attempt to quantify the combined output of two things that cannot yet be cleanly separated. How much comes from the mechanical changes to the engine, and how much comes from the chemistry? Austria is where that question gets answered for the first time with real data rather than estimates. To understand why the Shell fuel development matters so much, you need to understand what Ferrari has done to the engine it is designed for. Ferrari's power unit runs on a steel alloy cylinder head, a material choice that most manufacturers rejected because steel is heavier than the aluminium alternative. Ferrari chose steel because steel tolerates combustion chamber pressures and temperatures that would structurally compromise an aluminium head at the same operating point. That tolerance is not theoretical. Ferrari has been running intake air into the intercooler at over 100 degrees Celsius throughout the 2026 season compared to the 60 to 70 degree range that conventional power unit designs consider optimal. That is not a small deviation. That is a deliberately different operating philosophy built into the fundamental architecture of the car before a single lap of testing had been run. From Austria, that ceiling rises again. Multiple sources with direct access to Ferrari's technical program place the new intercooler temperature target above 115 degrees Celsius. The logic of pushing the temperature higher is combustion efficiency. At higher chamber temperatures and pressures, more of the fuel's energy converts into mechanical work and less is lost as heat through the exhaust or the cooling system. Every percentage point of thermal efficiency gained at the combustion stage translates directly into power output without any additional fuel consumption. But here is the constraint that makes the Shell development critical rather than merely interesting. Standard Formula One fuels are formulated to perform optimally within a specific temperature window. Take the combustion temperature significantly above that window, and the fuel's chemical behavior changes, burn characteristics shift, energy release timing changes, detonation risk increases. A fuel that performs perfectly at 70 degrees inlet temperature does not automatically perform well at 115 degrees. It needs to be specifically engineered for that environment, which is exactly what Shell's Hamburg laboratory has spent months building from the ground up. Here is the detail that makes Ferrari's Austria situation more strategically complex than a straightforward upgrade story. Yahoo Sports raised it explicitly this week, and it deserves more attention than it has received. Ferrari qualified for ADUO support, the maximum bracket, 2 tokens this season and 2 next year, because the FIA measured their internal combustion engine performance as at least 4% below the Red Bull benchmark. That measurement was taken from the first 5 races of the season. In those 5 races, Ferrari was running a power unit that, by multiple technical analyses, was not operating at its absolute ceiling. The hot engine concept was already in place, the steel cylinder head was already running, but the intercooler ceiling was 100 degrees rather than the 115 degrees Austria will introduce. The Shell fuel being used was the standard homologated specification rather than the custom compound being introduced this weekend. The question that cannot be answered with certainty but deserves to be asked is whether Ferrari's first 5 races represented the full capability of the power unit concept or a deliberately conservative operating point that kept their ADUO deficit measurement in the maximum benefit bracket while preserving the real performance for the moment when the upgraded fuel and engine arrived together. Nothing Ferrari did in those first 5 races was illegal. The regulations do not require teams to operate their engines at maximum performance. But the ADUO system's measurement protocol is based on what teams actually demonstrate, not on what their hardware is theoretically capable of. A team that understands this dynamic and structures its early season operating parameters accordingly is not cheating. It is being strategically intelligent about a regulatory framework that rewards demonstrated deficits with development freedom. Whether Ferrari did exactly that is something only Enrico Gualtieri's department knows for certain. What Austria will show is the gap between what Ferrari demonstrated in the first 5 races and what the SF26 actually produces when the fuel and engine are both at their intended operating point for the first time. Laurent Mekies confirmed something after Barcelona that has not received enough attention in the context of Austria. Red Bull arrived in Miami with its own version of a rear-wing rotation concept similar to Ferrari's FTM device, a development Vasseur openly called Macarena, implying it was derivative rather than original. That label was a specific observation about how quickly rivals move to replicate Ferrari's most visible innovation from 2026. The wheel rims followed the same pattern. Ferrari's BBS-designed rear rims introduced in Barcelona and never declared in the official FIA documentation because they fall outside the aerodynamic update declaration requirement have been the subject of intense study across the paddock since the race. Every team with access to photographs of the Barcelona car has been examining them. The question every technical director is asking is whether Ferrari found a legal path to thermal management that their regulations allow but that other manufacturers had not explored. What cannot be replicated quickly is the fuel. A fuel formulation that performs optimally at 115 degrees intercooler temperature is not a generic compound that can be purchased or reverse engineered between race weekends. It requires months of dyno development running fuel chemistry in exact combustion conditions, which in turn requires an engine architecture that can sustain those conditions reliably enough to generate usable test data. Ferrari has the steel cylinder head that makes those temperatures sustainable. Shell has the Hamburg laboratory that converted that capability into a fuel chemistry. The combination of a specific engine architecture and a fuel specifically engineered for it creates a performance package that rivals cannot access even if they understand the concept. Red Bull cannot run Ferrari's fuel in their engine. Mercedes cannot run Ferrari's fuel in their engine. The fuel is not a component that can be copied. It is a solution to a specific problem that only exists in a specific engine. Strip the speculation away and focus on what Austria's data will actually confirm for the first time. The speed trap at the end of the Red Bull Ring's main straight is the most direct measurement available of what the new engine and fuel combination produces in real conditions versus the specification Ferrari has been running all season. That data point arrives in the first 30 minutes of FP1 on Friday. It will not tell you exactly how many horsepower the new fuel added versus the mechanical changes. It will tell you whether the combined package moved the needle enough to change the competitive picture on a circuit that is genuinely power sensitive. 3 long straights, a short lap, limited opportunity for aerodynamic cleverness to compensate for a power deficit. The second thing Austria reveals is the reliability of the new operating point. Running an engine at 115 degrees intercooler temperature instead of 100 is a meaningful stress increase for every component in the thermal management system. The cooling architecture Ferrari built around the compact radiator package that enables the hot engine concept will be working harder in Austria than it has worked before. If the reliability holds across both practice sessions, qualifying and 71 race laps, it validates the engineering decision to push the concept further. If it does not, the data from whatever failure occurs becomes the most important information Ferrari's engine department has seen all season. The sandbagging theory, if it has any foundation, resolves itself completely at Austria. A team that ran conservatively in the first 5 races to secure maximum ADUO benefit and then arrived in Austria with the true specification will show a jump in straight-line performance that is noticeably larger than the modest estimates suggest. A team that was genuinely at its limit in the early races will show a more incremental improvement. The speed trap will not lie. Subscribe Friday morning is when this story starts producing real numbers instead of estimates. The engine is the headline. The fuel is the story. Ferrari's Austria package cannot be understood as 2 separate components, a mechanical upgrade to the power unit and a chemical upgrade to what burns inside it, because they were designed as one integrated system from the moment Shell's Hamburg engineers and Gualtieri's Maranello team began working together on the Austria specification. The intercooler temperature that makes the new fuel necessary is the same intercooler temperature that makes the new engine modifications productive. The fuel that maximizes energy extraction at 115 degrees is the fuel that makes the higher combustion chamber pressure worth the engineering cost. One without the other would be a partial solution. Together, they are the first complete expression of what Ferrari's hot engine philosophy was always intended to deliver. Whether it delivers 10 horsepower or 5 or something closer to 15, a number nobody outside Maranello and Hamburg can confirm with certainty today, Austria will give the paddock its first real read on a question that has been open since pre-season testing first showed Ferrari losing time on every straight. The question is not whether the fuel is clever. The question is whether clever chemistry, combined with a mechanical concept no rival can replicate in the short term, is enough to turn a Barcelona win into a championship fight. Friday's speed trap, Saturday's qualifying gap, Sunday's race pace in the power-sensitive first two sectors. 3 data points, 3 days, and at the end of it, the most honest answer the 2026 championship has produced yet about whether Ferrari's secret weapon was worth the wait.